Hey baby, the people want to know, can houseplants be outside?
Yeah, for sure. Houseplants do great outside. There are some things that you need to keep in mind though. The first is going to be shade. They need to be in full shade. They're likely greenhouse grown, which means that they're not suited for direct sun. The second thing is going to be the watering. You're going to have to keep up with the watering. It's very different. It's going to dry out much faster being outside than it is inside. And the third is temperature. Make sure that it's at least 60 degrees or better, warmer outside, because tropicals are not typically cold hardy. So there you have it.
Customer asked me to repot and stake their Monstera deliciosa with this massive root system. So first thing I do is measure it out. I want to get it a couple feet above the total height of the Monstera. I mark it just below the pot and cut my PVC pipe to length. Get your cocoa fiber and cut it out and tie some string. I used to use a twine for this one. And then you're just going to start wrapping it around. You want to make a nice good fit all the way to the top. Making sure I just wind it around every couple of inches again because I like to keep it pretty tight. Get to the top and then I actually go back down again because I want to cover all those gaps where the two pieces of fiber meet and just tie it together. Next, we're going to get on to the repotting. So I actually had to cut this one out. I just use a sharp razor blade and try not to damage any of the roots. Rip it apart where you can. I wanted to save as many of this massive root system as we could because it's so healthy. Look at those nice big roots. Very healthy Monstera right here, which is good to see. Loosen up the root ball. You're going to lose a few roots here, but it's worth it in the end. It's going to help the plant grow into the new soil. I like to kind of rake out some of them along the sides as well to really loosen up the root ball. Here I just use 1 part regular potting mix with 1 part perlite. I put some cocoa fiber in the bottom to block the drainage holes as well. Fill up your pot with a little bit of soil there at the bottom, and then we're going to place the Monstera in there. I like to leave about 1 inch at the top so that water can pool up when you're watering. Then you're just going to backfill. Make sure that you're hitting the sides so that all of the soil can get down into the bottoms, and of course firm it in as you go as well. You don't want any gaps when you're repotting. Next, we're going to do the tying up, and this part is really up to you. You kind of have to find the shape that you want. Just tie up bits by bits. Don't worry too much right now about training the actual plant to the pole. That's going to come later. For now, we're just going to tie up the main branches to get it to be more ruly, and over time is when we will shape it. It's a good time to prune as well, and that's finished product. There are 3 main reasons you would repot a plant as long as it's perfectly healthy. The first and most common reason would be if the roots are coming out of the bottom drainage holes. That's a good indication that the plant is ready to go up 1 pot size. Another reason would be if you're like the snake plant and you're just completely busting out of the pot. Oftentimes they make these babies and they will legitimately break the pot. So that's another good reason. And lastly, if it's just been a couple of years, there's a lot of ingredients in soil that can break down over time. And if it's been a couple of years, that material can break down and actually leach bad things into your roots. And that can kind of destroy the plant from the inside out. So again, as long as the plant is healthy, those would be the 3 main reasons why you'd want to repot. Here's why you should check dead blooms and dead foliage. Mealybugs. They especially like to hide on the undersides of the leaves and blooms, so check there very thoroughly. And when you find mealybugs on one part of your plant, they're going to be on another part. So mix up some neem oil and we're going to clean this baby up. Time to go hunting. Okay, what you want to do is look under each leaf. You also want to look down in the crevices because they love to hide. Oh, hey, there's one right there. Perfect. Gotcha. Are there any under this one? This guy looks clean. What about this one? Hey. Oh, that's a false alarm. Clean on this side. 2 found right here. It can be difficult to determine whether a plant is overwatered or underwatered just by the appearance alone. That's because if your plant is underwatered, so you haven't watered it in a while, it will wilt because roots are not taking up moisture and that dehydrates the leaves. If a plant has been overwatered, it'll actually look the same exact way. And that's because if it's overwatered, the roots have rotted and, oh. the roots have rotted and they're not able to take up moisture. So the leaves will still be dehydrated. Either way, the roots are not taking up moisture and the leaves will be dehydrated. Now, the way that you can determine whether you've underwatered or overwatered is usually by, well, if you know you haven't watered in a long time, if your soil is very dry, that could be underwatering. Overwatering would be if your soil has stayed very wet or damp for a significant amount of time. That would be the only way to tell between underwatered and over. This is called bud blast. There are three main reasons why this would happen. The most common reason is environmental change. Very often we buy these at the store and then we take them out to our car, especially if the weather is a little bit chilly, that can cause the buds to blast. The most common reason would be pests. If you have pests while the plant is trying to bloom, that can send the plant into shock and cause the buds to blast. The third most common reason is just inconsistent care. Oftentimes what we see is someone finally have success having a new orchid spike and the buds are starting to come out and they water it or fertilize it a lot to get it to bloom faster. And that would cause the plant to go into shock and the buds to blast. Or on the opposite spectrum, they finally have success, the buds are coming out and they say, oh, I better not do anything, I don't want to touch it. And so they don't water it or do anything, and then the plant dehydrates and the buds blast. Now these buds will never open up, but you can see some of them might still be healthy. If all of them have died, cut it off. If not, you can just cut off the ones that are dead and hope the new ones bloom. Watering your big plants can be a little bit of a challenge because it's not like you can really take them to the sink. So this is what we do. Whenever we repot a plant, we always pot it into a nursery pot that has drainage, and then we set it inside of a pot, a decorative pot, that doesn't have drainage. This one needs watered right now, so the topsoil is dry, and all we do is pour in a bunch of water here. We'll get it to go about a third of the way up the nursery pot, and then throughout the course of the day, it will suck up that moisture through the drainage holes, and it'll work its way up to the top of the pot. And when the topsoil is wet, you know that the plant has been completely watered, and you can take a turkey baster and suck out any of the excess water that might be still in the bottom because you don't want to sit in water. When a vine is climbing, it's reaching for more light. But when a vine is not climbing, it's searching for shade. The reason for that is because plants know that shade is provided by structures like trees, and they can climb on trees. So they creep their way along looking for that shade, and when they run into the tree or something to climb on, a hormone is activated that tells them to start climbing.
Hey there, buds. I need a little bit of advice because this long boy right here.
First of all, it's a beautiful plant, very well done. Okay, so here's how we're going to propagate these. This is a very cool way. Now I know this isn't the same exact plant, but it's going to work the same way. Take a pot and fill it with succulent soil right below the plant, and you can actually curl up the vines inside the pot. Take a little bobby pin or a clip of some sort and clip it down to the soil so that everywhere a leaf comes out is touching the soil, okay? And then whenever that topsoil dries out, I want you to just give it a good little spray like this, especially around these nodes. And over time, it's going to root into the soil. And once it's rooted into the soil, you can cut it away from the mother plant and you have a whole new pot of the string of hearts. Anthuriums are a super popular gift, but there's a lot of mystery about how to take care of them. First of all, do not use ice, okay? And as always, we are going to start out with the plant's view of the sky, because light is most important. So let's take a look down here. They're gonna need to see a nice wide view of the sky. Now these are great communicator plants because they will actually live in a lower light setting, but they won't bloom in a lower light setting. So if your anthurium isn't blooming, give it a little bit brighter light. Now if the blooms are coming out and they're green, scoot it back from the window a little bit. We want to find that happy medium where the blooms are coming out and they're the proper color. As far as watering goes, I like to water them when they're between 25 and 50%. Now these plants don't really have a dormancy season, so you don't really need to change up the watering. With proper light and care, these will actually bloom year round.
We have this leaf right here that's like, she's like fully curled up.
I think this is the case of watering the plant too frequently. Leaves can curl for many different reasons for the Pilea peperomoides, but You mentioned that the new leaf came out and immediately turned black and sort of died away. This indicates to me that the soil has just stayed too wet for too long. There might be a little root rot action going on there. Try to let your plant dry out. During the spring and summer months, you can let it dry out 25% in between watering. And in the wintertime, you can back that off to 50% in between watering. Let me know if that helps. Good luck. You probably aerate your lawn, but a lot of people don't know that you're supposed to aerate your potted plants. Just take a nice blunt object like this so you're not cutting any of the roots. And really, it's just as simple as poking holes all around the soil. Now, there are a couple of techniques here. I do like to wiggle it back and forth. I don't want to break any of the larger roots. A little bit of root breakage is really not that big of a deal. It actually can help stimulate some new growth. But what you're doing here is you're just getting air down into the roots, which is so important for healthy root growth. You're also going to help water distribution. When you poke little holes like this, you're making little channels for the water to get down to. And I know what you're going to say, Tanner, there's nobody out in nature poking holes in the soil, but the bugs and the worms and whatnot in the soil, they do all of that out in nature. So it's a perfect little system, and we can try to replicate it as best we can in our potted plants to keep them healthy. Here's how to make sure you don't buy another bad plant again. I like to make sure there's new growth on my plants and, of course, nice healthy foliage. Next, I look for pests. Make sure you're checking on the undersides of your leaves. That's where they like to hide. Check several around the plant, not just one or two. Also check the crevices of the plant and the soil. They can be hiding in there. Check the root ball also. Take it out of the pot and make sure it's nice and healthy. If you're buying from a place that doesn't allow you to do that, then you should be suspicious. This is an example of a plant that I would not buy. It has new growth, but some of the leaves looks like maybe some bacterial infection. Check each one of them pretty carefully to make sure nothing funky is going on. But yeah, that's how you do it. If you've lost leaves on the bottom of your fiddle-leaf fig, it's super easy to get them to fill back in. What you want to do is find these old nodes. Now this is where leaves were before. You can kind of see the little scarring that was happening right here. And inside this little node is a dormant hormone. And all you have to do is take a nice clean, sharp knife. Clean and sharp is super important. And you're gonna want to go at an angle and you're gonna wanna go right above that node and you're gonna cut into the branch at about a third of the way in. And you see it's gonna start bleeding right here. It's a little white sap. Don't get that on your fingers. If you do, just cut it off. And what's going to happen is that dormant hormone is going to be activated and you have a chance to push out either a new branch or a new leaf. You can do this as many times as you want on your dormant nodes and get your plant to fill out more. Your eyes dilate and restrict to let in a certain amount of light so that you can depict images, but plants don't do that. So the problem is we use our perception of what bright light means instead of what a plant perceives as bright light. Mushrooms aren't too big of a deal. Typically all it means is the soil has stayed too wet for too long, and it also means you probably have an organic rich soil, also not too big of a deal. If you want to cut them away and discard them, that's perfectly fine. You can leave them, it's not going to hurt the plant.